Alright, so this lecture or video is going to be about how to draw the structure of an atom. Before we start, it is important to understand two rules of an atom. Let's start with that. Atomic structure. Let me change the font here so it's visible. Okay, so the two rules of the atomic structure. The first rule says that the number of protons in the atom are always equal to the number of electrons. Now if you watch the previous video, I discussed about these subatomic particles which are present inside the nucleus, and I discussed that the subatomic particles are protons, neutrons and electrons. Protons and neutrons are inside the nucleus, whereas electrons are revolving around the nucleus on the shells or orbits. So the one rule is number of protons in the atom are always equal to the number of electrons. So if an atom has 5 protons inside the nucleus, it will definitely have 5 electrons in the shells or orbits as well. The second one is very important, and I call this rule as house number 288. And why is that? I'll explain it to you. I tell my students to remember this as house number 288 because it gets very convenient for them to remember calling it house number 288. Now what does this house number 288 means? The first two means that the first shell, which is next to the nucleus in the atom, will contain maximum 2 electrons. This means that it can have 1 electron, but it cannot have more than 2. It can have 1, it can have 2, but not 3 or 4. So the first shell, which is right next to the nucleus, it will have 2 electrons maximum. The second 8 means that the second shell will contain maximum 8 electrons. It can have 1, it can have 2, it can have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and maximum it can have 8. The third one says that the third shell would contain maximum 8 electrons as well. Now depending on the conditions, it can range from 8 to 18, but at this level, I'm talking about the grade level of grade 7, the Cambridge book, the level 8 book. Here we are just concerned about the first 8 electrons being put into the third shell, not anything else, not anything more than that. So house number 288 means that the first shell, which is next to the nucleus, will contain maximum 2 electrons. The second shell after that will contain maximum 8 electrons, and the third shell will have the same. Now to practice how to draw the structure of an atom, let's look at the structure of oxygen. If you look at the periodic table, you will see 2 numbers written on top of these what do we call them, these elements in the periodic table. And if you look at the atomic number of the atom, it is 8, and atomic mass of the atom is 16. So what you're going to do is, as we already know that atomic number of the atom is equal to the number of protons in the atom. So if number of protons is whatever the number of protons is, the rule number 1 of the atomic structure tells us that the number of protons is equal to the number of electrons. So if we have over here, we have 8 atomic number, that means protons will be 8, electrons will also be 8. We need to figure out the number of neutrons, even though it is not going to affect the structure, but still we need to know the number of neutrons as well. So for that we are going to use a formula. How are we going to use that formula? I'll tell you that. atomic mass, we know that it is the number of protons plus the number of neutrons. Let me just fix that. Okay, so that is the, let me change the color so we can clearly see. Okay, so here we are. So atomic mass is the number of protons as well as the number of neutrons. If we start putting the values inside this formula, we have atomic mass. If we see the value over here, we know that atomic mass is 16, right? So 16, and then we know that the number of protons is given, which is over here, the number of protons, which is 8 plus question mark, because we don't know the number of neutrons yet. Now we have placed the values. Now we need to figure out the values. So following the simple math rule, we'll do 16, we'll change the position of 8, we'll bring it on the other side. 16 minus 8 is equal to, we will have 8 neutrons. This is how we figure out, or we find out, the number of neutrons in an atom. Once we have that, we are going to draw the structure of the atom. Now if we look at the structure or the subatomic particles, in the oxygen we have 8 protons, we have 8 electrons, and over here, now that we figured out or calculate the value of the neutrons, we have 8. To keep it simple, I would suggest that when you are on this level, before drawing the structure, since we know the rule number 288, so let's do this, that let's figure out first that what is the number of electron is going to be in each of the shells. So first shells, we need total 8 electrons. First shell can have maximum 2 electrons, so we have 2 sorted out. Second shell, we'll see, if we look at 8 number, 2 are already settled or have been drawn or can be drawn in the first shell, so remaining are 6. Since second shell has the maximum capacity 8, so we are going to draw 6 electrons over here. So we have total 8 electrons. Now drawing the structure, what we will do is, let me take out the shapes. This is what we have. So drawing it, we have the inner structure, which is the nucleus. Let me color it orange and add text. With text, we are going to put proton is equal to 8, since the protons and neutrons are inside the nucleus. We place the number of protons and neutrons over here. So we have our circle, our protons and neutrons are here in the center inside the nucleus. Now we need to draw the first shell. Drawing the first shell, we'll see here we have the first shell, which is next to the nucleus. Let's send it backward. I'm just going to do this so just to explain to you how we are going to do this. 1 minute. Let me just bring the text box in the front as well. I hope this works. Yes, it worked. Okay, so I have here, let me bring it a little up and over here, so we can see how many electrons we are going to draw. So we have 8 protons and we have 8 electrons. Let's put our nucleus in the center. So one shell is there already. Let's draw another shell. Let me bring it forward as front as well. Oh, let's just group them together. Alright, so we have one is go. Let's do it. Let's bring it to the front, and then we will add another shell. shape. Alright, so the video got disconnected somehow. If you see over here, I have my second shell over here as well. I have labeled the first shell, and I'm going to label the second shell as well, so you're able to see which one is the first shell and which one is the second shell. So over here, when I calculated the number of protons, electrons and neutrons needed, I wrote over here that the protons would be 8, electrons obviously equal to the number of protons would be 8. The neutrons we calculated, we will need 8 neutrons as well. So over here we have it all figured out. We decided that the first shell will have 2 electrons, which is the maximum capacity, and the second shell will have the remaining 6 electrons here. So the first shell, which is next to the nucleus, it has 2 electrons on it. I have drawn these blue electrons over here. The second shell has the remaining 6 electrons. That's how you draw the atomic structure. The rules are the same. I'm going to repeat them. 2 basic rules for drawing an atomic structure. You need to know the number of protons, electrons and neutrons. So we know that atomic number, which is the number of protons, so the number of protons is always equal to the number of electrons. Second rule is the placement of electrons on the orbits or shells. So the first shell over here, we say that the maximum capacity of the first shell next to the nucleus is 2 electrons. The second shell can accommodate maximum 8 electrons, and the third shell can also accommodate maximum 8 electrons. We look at the we use the formula to calculate the number of neutrons using the mass number or the atomic mass or atomic number. We have the 3 values: protons, electrons and neutrons. Then we figure out how many electrons we are going to place on the first shell and the second. Depending on the number of electrons, we place them in the atomic structure then. I hope this video will be helpful for you. In case it's not, I would suggest you to watch the video again so you are able to understand how to do the calculations and how to draw the atomic structure. Thank you so much.